Good morning, children. This is Venugopal sir with English Unit 5 Social Issues. Look at page number 134. 134. Social Issues. So let us first discuss the meaning of the title. Social issues are the issues which influence or impact people in a society, any society. There are several issues that impact or influence the society in several ways. Every country or every society has its own issues to tackle with. There are several social issues prevailing in our society, in our country. Even after 74 years of independence, we still suffer from various problems. Different sections of society face different kinds of problems. First and foremost of them is untouchability. Even after 74 years of independence, still we see the instances of Dalits are being subjected to inhuman treatment, and Dalits are not treated as equals with the upper caste people or with the other caste people. That is one of the foremost social issue that is affecting our society, and there are several social issues. We can go on writing endless list. It is child labor, female infanticide, corruption, unemployment, dowry system, religious intolerance, women empowerment, Dalit empowerment. There are several issues which impact our society. The importance of women empowerment we learned in 8th class, and how Dalits are the people who are called untouchables, whom Gandhi used to call Harijans. Harijans means the people are children of Lord Narayana. Hari means Lord Narayana. So they are Harijans, they are the children of Lord Narayana. How can we call them lower caste people? Or how can we ill treat them? How can we discriminate against them? And Gandhi fought throughout his life for the empowerment of the Dalits. Maybe because of his efforts, and many people like Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and several other leaders who have, to a maximum extent, were able to put an end to the Dalit system or the untouchability system which afflicted our society since independence. But unfortunately, it is still prevailing in some parts of the country. And in this particular unit, we are going to discuss a person by name Bayaji who belonged to a Dalit caste, and how the upper caste people force him to die because he did not follow their instructions. A Dalit or a Harijan, an untouchable, trying to build a storied house, how he was treated, and finally how he was forced to die in a fire accident that was created by or caused by the upper caste people. This particular story, the first part and the second part, we are going to discuss. Before we go into the details of the first reading, A reading, look at the title page. There is a quote, Q-U-O-T-E, they are given there in the box in page number 134. Look at that, children. Where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake. This is a quote from a poem written by Rabindranath Tagore. The poem already you learnt in 9th class. The poem is Where the Mind is Without Fear. The poem's title is Where the Mind is Without Fear and Knowledge is High, Where the Heads are Held High. That is a poem that we discussed in 9th class. One or two lines from that poem are given here. Where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls. Into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake. What do you mean by this particular sentence? Where the world has not been broken up into fragments. Fragments means small pieces. The poet Rabindranath Tagore wanted through this poem, he prayed to the God to wake the people or to awake the people of his country, that is India, into a heaven of freedom where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls. What are the narrow domestic walls mentioned here? That's one of the questions given under the quote there. You can see the narrow domestic walls that break up the world into small fragments, small pieces. What are they? Caste system, religion, regional feelings, linguistic feelings. These are narrow domestic walls. And the more and more the domestic walls are increased, the house becomes much smaller and much tighter and much congested. Suppose this room where you go on building walls there and now only you can stand, other than you nobody can stand there. What happens? How can you live in such a society? And those narrow domestic walls are nothing other than caste, creed, religion, regional feelings, linguistic feelings. So, the poet prays to the God to awake his country into a heaven of freedom. That is referred to a heaven of freedom. Heaven is generally a place where gods reside. People say heaven is a place where gods reside. Heaven of peace or heaven of freedom. And you can enjoy that freedom where there are no domestic walls. When all the walls are broken up, you are very free. There is a lot of room to accommodate. In the same way, if the society is afflicted or divided because of these narrow domestic walls that I have mentioned earlier, there will be no peace. And when there is no peace, we cannot live in a peaceful manner in the world. So, he is requesting the God to awake the people of his country, walk into a kind of heaven of freedom in which the world has not been broken up into narrow domestic walls. You understand? That is the meaning of those lines which are written by Rabindranath Tagore. Actually, these are the lines taken from a poem written by him, Rabindranath Tagore, the author of our national anthem, under the title, Where the Mind is Without Fear. This we discussed in 9th class. Now, children, I am going to read out a reading. Very closely follow. After that, we go into the explanation part. The Storied House, Part 1. There was something really wrong with the state transport bus. It had come up the winding road in the mountain as if with a lifetime effort. The road was now downhill, and yet the bus moved as slowly as a sick man walking with the help of another. It reached the plain where the dispensary building was situated and stood still like an obstinate bull. Now, the destination was hardly a mile or two away, but the driver was sore and the conductor had no option but to be silent. When they realized that the bus wouldn't move any faster, A couple of passengers exclaimed, "Goddamn it, for a bloody nuisance." The conductor asked the passengers to get down, and they all put their strength together to push the bus. Having gained this initial momentum, the bus started. Passengers clambered up, jostling one another. The conductor rang the bell, and the bus gradually took on speed. It entered the village reluctantly, like a truant child being dragged to a school. As it wound its way through the curves on the outskirts, it groaned and croaked like a hen about to lay eggs, and stopped with a bang in front of Bhujaba Patil's residence. As it halted, it gave a big lurch, sending the passengers helter-skelter, churned like water in a pitcher when the carrier stumbles. All the passengers got down. The coolie put his hand on a huge wooden box and shouted, "Whose box is this?" Bayaji, who was brushing away the dust from his body, answered, "Oh, it's mine. Please lower it down." The coolie heaved and grunted as he lowered the box, which Bayaji caught with ease. Bayaji had packed his entire household goods in this box. There was no longer any reason to hang around in Bombay. He had worked honestly for the past 35 years in the dockyard and had retired from service 2 months before. Not that he had held an important position. He had merely got an extension for 2 years. During that period, he had become a supervisor. Otherwise, his entire life had been spent lifting heavy loads. He had worked very hard whenever he could, day and night. Bayaji had crossed 60 but was in sound health. He had a sturdy frame right from birth, and hard work had given a well-formed shape to his strong body. He paid 15 paise to the coolie, put the box in which he had thrown pots and pans and sundry other things on his own head, and began to walk in the direction of his house. As he reached Kadam's house, he saw Bhujaba coming towards him. Bhujaba was a known rascal of the village. Bayaji balanced up the burden on his head, straightening his neck. He said, "Greetings to you, sir. How are things with you?" Bayaji was a Mahar by caste, and according to age-old custom, he should have greeted Bhujaba with, "My humble salutations to you, sir, who are my father and mother." So, when Bayaji merely said greetings, Bhujaba became furious and said, "Do you think you can become a Brahmin merely by saying greetings? Can you forget your position simply because you have turned a Buddhist?" Bayaji was nonplussed. For a moment, he was tempted to knock him down with his box, but realized that he couldn't afford to do so. Besides, now he had come back to his village for good. He was to spend the rest of his days on this soil and would be interred in the same soil. He would not be able to return to Pune or Bombay hereafter. It was not a good policy to incur the hostility of anyone in the village, least so of the Patil, the village headman. So he said in a meek tone, "Sir, why spring this on me even before I set foot on the soil of my forefathers? I have to stay here till the end of my life." "Why? Aren't you going back to your job?" asked Bhujaba. "No, sir, my service is over. I have turned 60. With this, Bayaji lifted the load from his head a little to place it in position. "Then you have collected your fund amount?" Bhujaba was taking his measure. "Yes, sir," Bayaji replied with pride. "How much?" Bhujaba asked greedily. "Not much. What can a daily worker earn?" Bayaji answered. "Why won't you mention the figure, man?" Bhujaba persisted artfully. "Some 2,500 rupees." Bayaji gave the correct figure. "Bayaji, you have a heavy load on your head. Go to your house first. We will talk at leisure later. Bhujaba said in a mock sympathy. Yes, yes, Bayaji mumbled and walked in the direction of his house. At the moment, Bayaji was the proud owner of 2,500 rupees in cash, so it made no difference whether he was an untouchable or a Buddhist. If only one could swindle out of the untouchable Bayaji, or rather Buddhist Bayaji, 4 or 500 rupees, that was enough. With the thought in his mind, Bhujaba entered his vada, the big house. Exchanging pleasantries with people he met on the way, Bayaji reached the public building called Takya in the Untouchables settlement. The building was named Buddha Vihar by those who had embraced Buddhism. As Bayaji neared Buddha Vihar, the children who were playing with a ball made of rags finished their game and cried out, Baiju Nana is here, Baiju Nana is here, and scampered in the direction of Bayaji's house. Bayaji's 85-year-old mother quickly scrambled to her feet. She had aged much, but her old, worn frame was still sturdy, and her teeth were strong enough to break the grams. She could thread a needle without help. When she heard of Bayaji's arrival, her heart swelled. As Bayaji came in, his wife concealed her joy with the end of her sari and took down the box from his head. His grandchildren clung to him and began to twist the folds of his dhoti. The neighboring children watched the scene in idle curiosity. Come, get into the house, children, said Bayaji. His mother walked out with a bent back and told Bayaji to wait outside the door. Bayaji obeyed. The old woman came forward, poured some water over the piece of bread in her hand, moved it around Bayaji's face, and flung it away as an offering. She ran her palms over his cheeks and pressed her fingers on her temples. All 8 fingers gave out a cracking sound. Bayaji's family was doing well. He had 8 children in all, 6 sons and 2 daughters. The daughters had been married off and had given birth to children. The elder son looked after the fields. The next 2 sons were in government service. The one after them was a school teacher, and the 6th one was still studying. Since they knew that Bayaji was coming home for good, the elder son in service and the 2 daughters were already home to greet him. All of them wondered what their father had got for them from his lifetime earnings. The next day, when Bayaji opened the box, it revealed only some pots and pans, nails and photographs. Looking at these, the elder daughter asked, Nana, how is it that you haven't brought anything for us? Bayaji was amused that his daughters thought in this childish manner, even after they had children of their own. He ran his eyes over all his children and said, Look here, children, if I had brought new clothes for you, they would tear. If I had brought an ornament, it would soon wear out. Out of my earnings, I wish you to have something that will last longer. Bayaji paused after these words. His eldest son was godly. He said, Neither we nor our wives want anything. Tell us what you would like us to do. Look, children, ours is such a large family. Even at the meal time, we have to eat by turns or sit crowded, knocking our knees together. I wish to build a house out of my earnings, and it has to be a storied house. The usual 3-portioned house won't be adequate for us. All were happy with this plan. The plan was finalized, and the foundation of the storied house was laid on the auspicious New Year day.